Charles Bean, the founder of the Australian War Memorial, had three objectives for this Hall of Memory. He wanted it to be a place of national commemoration, of national unity, and for it to have a spiritual ambience. But the spirituality would be for the men of the Australian Imperial Force and the nurses. He commissioned Napier Waller in 1937 to design the internals of what you now see.
Waller enlisted in 1915, and although not an official war artist, he was still determined to make art. As he went, he kept a diary, which he illustrated with drawings. The diary, which is in the collection of the War Memorial, is a fascinating document. He was an artilleryman fighting in the Battle of Bullecourt when his luck finally ran out. He was badly wounded in the arm, shoulder and back. The surgeons knew he was an artist in civilian life and worked hard to save his painting arm, but in the end couldn't. The arm was amputated at the shoulder, the complete loss of his principal artistic instrument. And whilst recuperating, he taught himself to use the left hand. Fairly soon, he became competent using his left hand and was able to complete the drawings he'd started with his right.
Charles Bean and John Treloar, effectively the first director, the longest-serving director, Treloar a veteran of both Gallipoli and France, asked themselves a very important question. What they asked were the qualities, the values that we saw in these men and women that we regard as being essential, not just for victory in battle, but personal and social qualities and values that inform character. Character derives from the Greek word. It means the impression left in wax by a stone seal ring. The Greeks called it the stamp of personality. And what you discover as you go through life is that transcending everything in life, rank, power, money, influence, intellect, and looks, is character. It's informed by worthwhile intrinsic virtues.
The choice of Napier Waller to work on the Hall of Memory was a really good one, being a returned soldier and also, by that point, Australia's premier artist in mosaic and stained glass windows. He set about the job in 1937, but it became a 22-year project by the time he'd finally finished.
As a further tribute to those who did not return, the entire inside wall of the Hall of Memory is to be covered in mosaic. Designer and supervisor of this vast project is Napier Waller, here working in his Melbourne studio on a 40-foot-high panel that will cover one wall. Tracings are taken from the completed cartoon section by section. Mosaic lines are marked on the tracing, following the natural construction lines of the limbs as much as possible.
I was working on the Hall of Memory for 4.5 years. First on the stained glass windows and now on mosaic. The whole area of the walls to be covered is about 13,000 square feet, or 5 tennis courts.
70 different colours are being used, each identified by number. The tesserae, as the blocks are called, are made in Italy from baked enamelled glass. The finished mosaic will contain 6 million pieces.
He engaged a number of female students from the University of Melbourne to come and help him. At its peak, he had 17 women working on the project, full-time, every day, 9 to 5, fixing tiles to the pattern to meet the design for inside. The mosaic was created in panels about 1 foot square, all of them done in Melbourne. When those panels were completed, they were carefully coded and numbered and shipped up to Canberra for installation according to the master plan in place up here.
At the memorial, the sections are set out in their right order, then hoisted up into the gantries where mosaic craftsmen apply them to the wall. The walls are rendered with cement, and the back of the mosaic is also cemented to keep each of the pieces in place and provide a thick bed for the tesserae to rest in. When the pieces are in position, the paper is peeled off and the mosaic washed and cleaned. This section has taken 6 months to complete, a labour befitting the solemnity and importance of this memorial.
There were 3 sets of 5: social qualities, personal qualities and fighting qualities. And in those 3 sets, he created archetypes linked to each quality. And in the windows, we can see detail and symbols associated with those particular qualities.
So if you look above the entrance to the Hall of Memory, to these first 5 values, on the far left is an aircraft technician, and you see above him an arc vice and the flame of invention, and the value beneath is resource. We say to dig deep, but essentially what it means is to look for every material in every human resource you might have available to you to help you achieve your objectives. And then candour. It means to be open and honest. And what Bean observed in the Australians was that they were unrestrained in expressing their views and their opinions, and that where they excelled most was when they were honest. The most prominent image that they chose to face directly down toward the Parliament, down Anzac Parade, is not a light horseman, it's not a naval officer, it's a nurse. And again, in doing so, we reveal something of our character as a people. So you'll see this nurse is holding a basin. It has instruments in it. And immediately above her head is the symbol of the Red Cross, the international symbol of charity. And as there is in each one of these window frames, at the top is an image which depicts and reflects the quality or the value below. In this case, it's a pelican directly feeding her young from her bleeding heart, the ancient symbol of devotion, to completely subsume yourself into the people and the cause to which you have committed. And then curiosity. Being observed in the Australians an irreverence for authority. They wouldn't uncritically accept what they were being told. They were constantly asking questions. And then the naval officer. And you see that he's holding a telescope, the importance of vision. And then above him a gyroscope and 3 vertical red lights, symbolising the importance of maintaining your orientation and being steadfast in the face of adversity. Independence, and knowing when to stand aside from a mob. Out on the western side here, firstly under the Lewis machine gunner, comradeship. We call it mateship. The spirit that binds us as Australians, irrespective of the adversities that we face. And Bean wrote of the Australians at Passchendaele, 38,000 casualties in just 8 weeks. He said wherever they went, they were sustained by belief in themselves and in one another, whether their own death or the end of the world would come. And what young Australians especially need to understand, that in the end, what we need most is one another, comradeship. Then under that naval gun, you've got ancestry. You never forget from where you came, who gave you what you have and made you who you are. And you see immediately above his head is an open book, and superimposed above it is a laurel wreath. A reverence for reading, a reverence for having an open mind. You've got to have a mind that is open to new ideas and to new people. The cricket stumps, the bails and the ball, the importance of recreation. Irrespective of the intensity of the tasks that you have before you, always take time out to relax. And then immediately above it, in the top pane, we see a cathedral spire. That symbolises the philosophical inheritance that our nation has received from Europe. And then in the centre, superimposed in front of the soldier, is the symbol of the Southern Cross, the constellation in the skies above our continent, Australia, and of course, proudly displayed on our flag. And above him, you'll see the symbols of the crown of the monarch of Britain, the importance of being patriotic to the Commonwealth. Patriotism, a commitment and a belief in your country and the people who form your nation. And then under the airmen, chivalry. And what Bean and others observed in the airmen of the First World War were the chivalric codes of the medieval knights. And you'll see a helmet and other accoutrements of the knights of the Middle Ages. Chivalry. And those chivalric codes that they saw in these young Australian airmen of courage, honour, integrity, courtesy, a sense of justice, and most importantly, perhaps, a readiness to help others, no matter what the cost to yourselves. And of course, personified in the Victoria Cross action of Frank McNamara in March 1917, landing his plane behind enemy lines to help a mate who'd been shot down, was desperately wounded, getting him into his plane and under heavy fire, being able to rescue him. Chivalry. And then loyalty. That in the end, you have to believe in other people and you have to believe in a cause. And you have to remain steadfast in your commitment to those people and that cause, loyalty. And of course, immediately above the soldier's helmet, you see the rising sun of the Australian Imperial Force. On our far left, coolness. And then next to that, control. These are two very important qualities. Restraint, knowing when not to act, when not to speak, is often far more important than the alternative. And you'll see that the soldier of control has many measuring instruments. The importance to the extent that you're able to of getting control of the environment in which you're working and having to achieve your objectives. Under the light horseman, emu plumes in his slouch hat, audacity. That nothing of value in life is achieved without taking a risk. Not cavalier risks, but risks that have to be taken. Endurance, you never give up. As Winston Churchill said, you never, ever, ever, ever give up. Whatever objective you have, you will not achieve it unless you keep at it. And then under the Australian soldier at Gallipoli, where in the summer months they cut the legs from their pants, decision. Ultimately, we all have to make decisions. We have to be responsible for them. Every decision that you make is important. It has consequences for you, and it has consequences for others. And if you look up to the dome, again, tiny little Italian terrazzo tiles, and you'll see the centerpiece, these outstretched hands with coffins that are rising up to the apex. And there are 7 clusters of these coffins. And at the apex is a 7-pointed sun and the constellation of the Southern Cross. On the Australian flag, that big white star is the Commonwealth Star. It has 7 points on it, the 6 states and territories of Australia. The symbolism of this is the spirits of the fallen are returning to their spiritual home, Australia. And at the base is a wreath of Australian flora, of wattle, water lilies, bulrushes, and a black swan to represent the freedom of flight. But it's also an animal that, if it can, returns to the place of its birth in order to die. A lot of diplomatic work was done with the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, with the authorities in France, and then finally, in 1993, this man was exhumed from the Adelaide Cemetery in France. This man was chosen by the Australian authorities. He was placed in a Tasmanian blackwood timber coffin. An Australian flag was placed over it, a slouch hat on the top. He spent a day at the tower of the Australian Memorial at Villa Bretana, a night under the Menin Gate, where are inscribed the names of 55,000 missing in Flanders, Belgium, including 6,192 Australians. The last post was played over his coffin at 8 o'clock at the Menin Gate. And then he was flown back to Australia by Qantas to Sydney, a C-130 Hercules to Canberra. And then on Remembrance Day, the 11th of November, 1993, with much ceremony, a gun carriage with the Australian Prime Minister, the Premiers of Australia, 25,000 people either side of Anzac Parade, 600 military standards and banners being displayed. The coffin was placed on the Stone of Remembrance in front of the Australian War Memorial. The catafalque party formed around it.
Catafalque party presents arms.
And then he was brought up here to the Hall of Memory, and he was placed in the centre of the tomb that had been so designed and created. Robert Coombe, military medal recipient, a veteran of the First World War, wearing his slouch hat, came over and in a moment of unscripted informality, pouring soil from Posiere onto his coffin, said, "You're home now, mate." On the day of that interment, in 1993, our Prime Minister, Mr. Paul Keating, perhaps unusually for an Australian Prime Minister, delivered Jeffersonian oratory, arguably the finest speech given by any Australian Prime Minister on any topic. the eulogy to the unknown Australian soldier.
He is all of them, and he's one of us.
And in 2013, we took the key phrase from the eulogy and placed it onto the front of the tomb. He is all of them. He is all of those 62,000 killed in the First World War. He's all of the 41,000 that have been killed since. And he is one of us. There are 102,800 names of men and women killed in our name, in our uniform, under our flag, in war, peacekeeping, humanitarian and disaster relief operations on those bronze panels, the Roll of Honour, cloaking from the cloisters around the commemorative area just outside here. Almost all of them were not professional soldiers, sailors, airmen or women. They were people just like us. So whether you are Australian by birth or Australian by choice, there is a direct link between him, his sacrifice, whom he represents, and us. We reveal again our character as a people. The man whom we most revere is someone we do not know, who is not a man of position or rank. He could be an Aboriginal man, he could be a non-Aboriginal Australian, we don't know. But this is us. We revere and devote our idealism to the heroism of the everyday Australian. That's us.